before we get into the film review, I just want to say really quick, I literally watched this film for the first time, walked home, sat down and hit record, so it's a very chaotic review, and it's also lacking a lot of information and context to kind of the bigger picture of the MCU. I kind of just winged it. I think if I'd sat down and organise my thoughts, maybe put some bullet points together, this would be a little bit more of a put together video, but it's a little bit all over the place. But I wanted to film my initial thoughts, so these are my initial thoughts. So with all that being said, take everything I say in this video with a pinch of salt, and I hope you enjoy. I have so many thoughts about this film that I just thought I would sit down immediately and start giving them to you, because first of all I want to say I love Sam. I love him as Captain America, and I was pretty hyped for this movie. I had two opinions going in from friends of mine. The first one was that Marvel is so back and this was an incredible movie and this was worth the wait, etc, etc. And the second opinion was it was kind of mid. So I had two fairly contrasting opinions going in, and I feel like I went in pretty neutral. I didn't go in with huge expectations, but I didn't go in thinking it was going to be shit, if that makes sense. First of all, £7 for a small popcorn? It's on me because I paid it. When did that happen, guys? Crazy. Also, my viewing experience was somewhat hindered by the people on either side of me. On my right, he can't have been older than 13. This boy who was on Snapchat for about 50% of the film. And when he wasn't on Snapchat, he was getting Snapchat notifications. Put your phone on silent. I nearly had a crash out in the final scene of the movie. I was like, if you don't put your phone on silent. And then there was an adorable child on my left who wasn't disruptive at all. They were just adorable. There's an action scene that takes place in the sky, and there are like fighter jets involved. And this child was going like, meow. like as the planes were on screen and were doing their thing, and it was so cute. And he kept doing the side eye to me, and I kept going and smiling at him, and when he left he waved at me and I felt so honoured. Anyway, there was the geezer on the right who was pissing me off, but it's okay. I have a lot of thoughts and I'm just going to get straight into it. Spoilers ahead, by the way. My first issue, really, with the movie is that it starts off with like an info dump, like a lore. What's that called? When they give you context. What's that called? I was trying to think of it in the cinema, but I can't remember. Oh no. What's this called? Info dump. Exposition. There was a whole exposition dump at the beginning of the film, which I thought was a really interesting choice. And they basically went over what I'm assuming is the events of The Incredible Hulk. I have seen that film, but it was a little while ago and I can't really remember. I think I've only seen it once. I quite liked it. The 2008 one, which has... oh my god. The guy in it. Is his name Ethan? Please hold. Edward Norton. I'm gonna have to start this again. The 2008 version with Edward Norton, who plays Bruce Banner instead of Mark Ruffalo because he was recast and that was a whole thing. And then also there's the little nods to the fact that they've recast Bradley. That's not his name. Thaddeus Bradley is a character from Now You See Me.
Ariana, what are you doing here?
Thaddeus, Captain America, Brave New World. Thaddeus Ross. Okay, I've lost my train of thought. Thaddeus Ross was recast as Harrison Ford from William Hurt, I believe is his name, but I feel like I have to check. Oh my god, this was supposed to be so simple. Yes, correct. Thaddeus Ross was recast from William Hurt, who played him in the Incredible Hulk film and in following Marvel movies, like the one that comes to mind is Civil War, because he's the one that comes up with the Sokovia Accords or introduces them to the team, and he's also in Black Widow, and he's chasing Natasha around the planet, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't do this.
Do what?
Come after me. I mean, you're embarrassing yourself. It looks desperate.
He passed away and he's been recast to Harrison Ford, and they did do a little like nod to that, of the fact that he looks a little different, which I thought was kind of silly, but that's okay. So they do a whole exposition dump at the beginning, basically reintroducing the storyline of the Incredible Hulk into the MCU. They haven't really properly acknowledged it, I don't think, to my knowledge. It's been a really long time since I watched all the films, but I don't think they've kind of included it as part of the MCU particularly, because Edward Norton was recast to Mark Ruffalo. They kind of went, clean slate, this is Hulk now, we move on. And now they've introduced this thing that happened, which was with Ross and Banner and Ross's daughter, but it's all happened off screen because they're all different actors. The timeline's a bit confusing to me. When did this happen? You know? And now Ross is president of the United States, which I didn't see coming personally. And I think my biggest problem with this film, period, is that they're basically trying to redeem Ross's character, who's been very anti-heroes, anti-powered people enhanced is the word they use. And he's been the reason that a lot of them have been locked up. He's been the one chasing them and hunting them. He's just a very, I mean, if I'm being generous here, morally grey character. And in this film, they basically try and redeem him and say that he's changed and he's not the man he was and he regrets things that he's done, and he's trying to show his daughter that he's still her dad and he's still the man that she knew. And I just don't really feel like it works because it's Harrison Ford after having been William Hurt. Does that make sense? If they had Harrison Ford play the character that we've kind of got to know throughout all of the movies, with this enhanced people aren't good stance, if he'd done a few scenes like that, even just a few scenes, not even like a whole film necessarily, but if we'd just seen him here and there, I don't know where, because like when was the last time Marvel released a film? It can't have been Far From Home. What have they done since then? The way I'm pretty sure I've seen everything they've done, and I've still forgotten. If it was something good that's been released in that time, I'm sorry. I'm dearly sorry. I don't know when we would have seen him, because William Hurt only passed away recently. 2022, yeah. So I don't really know when they would have done this, but because we're trying to adjust to a transition from William Hurt to Harrison Ford anyway, and then they go, and we're gonna quite drastically change his character because he's grown. Good for him. We haven't seen that though. I think that was my biggest problem with this film, is so much of the conflict and the emotional investment that you are supposed to have in it is based on things that we haven't seen. It's happened off screen. So I wanted to be invested in Ross's character, and I thought that Harrison Ford did an incredible job. I mean, obviously it's Harrison Ford. He's an incredible actor, and I thought he really did a good job with what they gave him. But I just was a bit confused as to why he's changed all of a sudden, and more than anything, when did these events transpire? When did Hulk and the Abomination destroy Harlem? Like, when was that in this timeline? Was it in 2008? Because if it was, I fear everything that Ross has done since then, do we not have some remorse for that as well? Do you know what I mean? Because like nothing else was mentioned. It was just like, oh, she'll never forgive me for sending the army after Bruce Banner. What about everything else you've done, King? Like, do you know what I mean? Okay, according to this Entertainment Weekly article, the 2008 Incredible Hulk film is considered MCU canon. So I'm assuming the exposition dump they did at the beginning was to remind the people who have seen the film what happened and tell all the people who haven't seen that film what happened so that everyone's on the same page. I personally didn't feel like the exposition dump was as effective as it needed to be, because my question still remains, this is canon, so this happened in 2008, so why is this the only thing that Ross is bothered about? Why is this the only thing he feels guilty about? I maintain this question because I've just read this article that says that it's canon. They addressed in She-Hulk that Edward Norton was recast to Mark Ruffalo. That's great, But I still feel like there are questions that haven't been answered. If there is an answer to this that I have not been able to find in my post-watch research, do let me know. I realise I'm discussing the film and I haven't actually once mentioned Sam, and interestingly I feel like the problem I had with Ross is that I couldn't get invested in his character properly because I felt like everything that was bothering him happened off screen, whereas with Sam, I feel like they didn't focus on him enough. I thought The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was an incredible series. We got 1 season of it and I thought they absolutely used every single episode. A lot of people didn't like it. I loved it. In fact, it actually kind of changed me. I finished it and I thought, I don't know if I can ever watch that again because it was so emotionally powerful and it really hit me, and I just thought it was really well done, and I thought it really gave the amount of time that Sam deserved to his character. Like, they added so much and they gave him so much time to explain what he was feeling and what he was going through and why he was kind of grappling with taking up the mantle, and I just thought it was so good, and I thought it was the perfect setup for his film, and I was so excited. And then I feel like there was a disconnect from the show to now, and I think in canon, a few years have passed. So, like, yes, they've moved on, but I didn't feel like we had context to what had happened in between. I suppose it's a similar problem. I felt like a lot of his current thoughts and current struggles had happened before the film, but we hadn't really been told, and now we're just being thrown into these action scenes, which, by the way, I wasn't a huge fan of. I didn't love... The very first thing that I noticed about this film was in the opening sequence, after we'd got the weird info dump at the beginning, the very first action scene. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but when I was sitting watching it, my very first thought was, it looks like it was shot like an advert. I don't know if it was the cameras they used, the angles they chose, the camera movement, or maybe a combination of the three. I'm really not sure what it was. If I had the scene in front of me and I could break it down in a slightly more articulate way, I would. But as someone who's only seen it once 30 minutes ago, something just felt wrong. I don't know if it was too clean or too easy, or I feel like the thing that makes old Marvel so good is there's a certain level of grit to it. And I was kind of hoping that they would bring back a bit of the grit for this film, because what better film to bring it back for than a Captain America movie? Give me something that has weight and punch. And to bring Isaiah in, who is an incredible actor, by the way. I don't know his name, but oh my god, let me search his name, because my goodness, that man can act. Carl Lumbly. Carl Lumbly, you deserve an Oscar, honestly. Brilliant. I thought his scenes carried a lot of punch. I thought when we actually got Sam having conversations with people, having interactions, having conflict, like those scenes I was so here for. And then they'd jump into an action scene that was really clean and really shiny and just a bit like, I don't even know why they're doing that. Like, why are we killing people right now? Like, the action scenes didn't feel like they had high stakes particularly. They also bless them, they blew the entire budget on, there's a fight scene in the middle of the film that supposedly very high stakes, and to be fair, it was my favourite action scene of the movie, where they're flying around in the sky, and that's where the little kid was going like shoo, shoo. And it was very clear that they poured all of their money into that scene, because it was arguably the best action scene of the film. But then the final showdown, did we need to use blue screens for the entire thing? And I say blue screens because it was giving green screen, but I know that Marvel often use blue. I don't know, man. It just... And then also, can we talk about Bucky popping in for 5 minutes? One, why was he not more in the movie? That felt weird, that he wasn't there more. And in my opinion, he should have either been there or not been there at all. Why are you popping in for 5 minutes, having an emotional chat, and then dipping? Like, it just felt so strange. He came in, and, do you know, Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan have such an incredible on-screen dynamic, because the moment he stepped on screen, the two of them, I was like, now this is what I need more of. And it wasn't even that I needed Bucky to be there, it was suddenly there was energy on screen because the two of them have such a great connection as actors. Don't get me wrong, I do really like Danny Ramirez as an actor, and I think he did really well opposite Anthony Mackie, and I think they have a great dynamic. They did bin him off for like a good chunk of the movie, which I did see coming, and I think I understand why they made that decision, because it meant that Sam had to face the final moment. It had to be just him, and I do like that, and I think that was a good choice. I think a problem at the moment that Marvel is having is they're not giving us enough to work with the characters. So Sam, in my opinion, was the highlight of the movie. I wanted more of him. I wanted more Sam, more dealing with the pressures of being Captain America, and just more of him. I feel like when we had Steve, his movies were overwhelmingly about his own inner turmoils and his own inner struggles, despite everyone and their mothers expecting him to save the day always. It always came down to him, because of course it did, because that's how life works. And I feel like with Sam, I don't feel like they gave him that space to do that and to be that, and that was disappointing to me. And then the rest of the characters either had depth that was given to them overnight that we haven't seen the development of, or didn't really have anything that we could latch onto and go, yeah, I love that person. In old Marvel, I hate doing that because it's like, we've moved on, it's a new era, and comparison is annoying, and we can't expect it to be what old Marvel was because it's finished, it's done, they're bringing in new people, we've got to treat it differently. But in old Marvel, all of the side characters were just as beloved and just as important and just as layered, and even if they had 5 minutes of screen time, they still managed to pack in Easter eggs and hints at things and depth that wasn't necessarily explored a ton because they didn't have time, but there were hints of things that you could hold on to. You know, Bucky isn't a main character really, he never really has been. He will become one as Thunderbolts and what have you comes out, if they don't kill him off, but he's always been like a sidekick or a co-lead. You know, he was a co-lead in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was his first big moment, but he's not beloved in the level that he is because he has hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of screen time. He's beloved because they pack in layers into tiny interactions and leave little Easter eggs, and I just feel like they're not doing that. Am I just not noticing them? I don't know. I get very passionate because Marvel was such a big part of my life and it consumed years of my life, and I regret none of it. It was so good and I was so looking forward to this movie, and it's not bad. I sound like I think it's bad. It's not a bad movie. It's a good movie. Go watch it. You'll enjoy it. It's good. They rely too heavily on green screens, but it's good. It's just not what I wanted it to be. I think I just wanted it to be more about Sam, and it didn't really feel like it was for some reason. I don't know if I'm just one of those fans that will never be satisfied. Like, I don't know. He did have scenes with his partner, Torres? I think his name's Torres. For some reason, I was watching the film and I was going, what's his name? Danny Ramirez, that's his name. And then someone called him, was like, Torres, and I was like, oh, that's not his name at all. And then the credits rolled and that's the actor's name. I don't know how that is so deeply ingrained in my brain that I saw him on screen and I went, Danny Ramirez. But he did have some deep and meaningful talks with his partner. He had deep and meaningful talks with Isaiah. Maybe I'm just at a point where I'll never be satisfied. I don't know. I don't know how I would have done it. Let's just say that. Honestly, my biggest beef is that they didn't show us what happened with Ross. They just showed us him regretting everything that happened with Banner and with his daughter, and it's like, we haven't seen any of that. If you've seen the 2008 film, you'll know what's going on. If you haven't, you won't have any idea what's going on. And you've got this guy in front of you that's going through all of this inner turmoil. And it's like, why though? Like, what do you mean? And even if you've seen the film, there's a level of disconnect because they're all different actors. It wasn't Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. Oh my god, they got the original actress back. I'm floored. I take it all back. They got a different guy to play Stearns though, right? Tim Blake Nelson. Or did they get him? Is that the same guy? I shouldn't be allowed to watch films, I think. Is that the same guy? So Ross's daughter and the bad guy were the same. I didn't think the bad guy was the same. It doesn't matter. I've been talking about this for too long. I think the camera work was strange, and I can't put my finger on why. It might just be the kind of action movie curse that's happening at the moment, which is everything's too clean and too perfect and too shiny. And if you don't know what I mean by that, I don't know how else to explain it. But maybe it's just that. I don't think it was a good idea to bring Sebastian Stan in, because I don't understand why he wasn't more in the film. I appreciate that it's Sam's film and it's not about Bucky, but then don't bring him in at all. It just felt so strange that he would come in as a super soldier and not be helping with the literal dire situation. Like, the country nearly went to war and he was just like, I'll see you in Congress, I guess. Like, why are you not helping? I don't know, that just felt weird. And also, again, why is he a congressman or a future congressman? We haven't seen that development. It's not that I don't think that he would do that. It's just that I can't see the A to B path that he's taken. I feel like that's all I was doing for the entire movie, is going, how did he get there? Why does he feel like that now, but he felt like that then? Like, the last time I saw you, you were saying this, and now you're saying this. And I just felt kind of confused about why characters had made certain decisions. And I do find it kind of funny when people kind of say, that was really out of character for that person to do that. And it's like, well, characters do change and develop, and Bucky Barnes in the first film he appears in is very different to Bucky Barnes in, let's say, the last project he appeared in. So let's say the first Avenger compared to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, those are two very different people, and that's because this guy has been through a hell of a lot more than this guy. So character development is not what I have beef with, it's the fact that I haven't seen it take place. I just feel like I switched this movie on as someone who's never seen all the films, and I've seen all of them. So the fact that I'm watching it, feeling this disconnect, it's just very weird. I would like to know your thoughts, because, I don't know, I feel like every time a Marvel project is released, there's some kind of controversy. I don't think it's been all bad since, I don't know, Endgame. Is that when people say it kind of started to fall off? First of all, I really like Captain Marvel. It's got some problematic, strong female character issues, but as a film, I quite like it. I loved Eternals. Loved Eternals. What else did I like? I loved, obviously, as we had the TV show Saga, WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Agatha All Along recently, ate that up. Loved that. So I think people are really quick to kind of hate and say that it's shit and it's not what it used to be. And it's not what it used to be fair, but it's not all bad. And Captain America: Brave New World is not a bad film. However, I will say that it is following the trend of Hollywood at the moment, where it has lost some of its sincerity. I want to stress that I enjoyed it. It just felt too polished, almost, and I wanted more grit, and I wanted to see the development that was happening with the characters rather than the results of events. Does that make sense? I wanted to see the events as well as the repercussions rather than just the repercussions, because I felt like there was a disconnect there. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, all those YouTube things, and I really would like to hear your thoughts in the comments. I am going to stop yapping, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!